Sean McVay is now joining us live, and we appreciate that. He's a busy guy. Great to see you, Sean. As always, you look rested, as rested as you guys can be. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I don't know if my wife would agree with you that I'm not impulsive, but other than that, I think everything is good. So far, so good.
I was talking to Les Need about this. I said, you guys have done such a great job building the defense. You got to get some toys for Sean McVay. And they go out and they get Ferguson, the tight end from Oregon, who I watched a ton of. He's a real player. Devontae Adams to go with Puka. And I did feel like this draft was a little bit of, hey, let's get Sean some burst and some youth and some different guys offensively. Will the offense look the same? What is your sort of sense? A star tight end, Devontae Adams, a healthy Puka. By the way, Kyron Williams now sounds like he is totally dedicated, very critical of himself in the fumbles. Is the offense going to look mostly the same?
Yeah, you know what? I think we're in the process of building that right now, Colin. What I do feel really good about is over the last couple of years, being able to, really lean into the draft with some foundational guys, and then you can be a little bit more strategic and specific with the way that we onboarded, whether it's through free agency, even bringing Coleman Shelton back. I think it's a big deal for our offensive line and the continuity. Adding Devontae, as you mentioned, and then in the draft, when you have 6 picks, wanted to continue to add to our defensive front. You get an inside backer who we like, and then you get a skill position from each of the 3 main groups with the tight end, receiver, and running back. So we are excited. I think Matthew's been outstanding leading the way. But as you and I both know, we're building foundations in the offseason. We've got to continue to do that into training camp. And you hopefully stay as healthy as you possibly can while finding your style of play and identity that fits these guys best.
I've been saying this, is that I do think as quarterbacks get older, offensive coaches have a different sensibility with O-lines, with pass protection. And it's just the reality is that it's one thing when Stafford's 26 and he can bulldoze through some things, or Aaron is 28. But as Tom Brady aged and Peyton Manning and Matt Stafford, it's different. There are certain things they can't just talent out of. How do you coach Stafford today, or an older quarterback than a younger quarterback? Are there things that you understand? Are you like a protective parent sometimes? He's 37, and do you think to yourself, hey, I'm not going to have him practice today, or I don't want him doing that, or do you coach him a little differently, not only out of respect, but because of his age?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is how do we keep him mentally fresh throughout the course of the year, knowing that the long journey, he's going into year 17. The good thing is he still loves football, but I think the goal is this guy is an extension of the coaching staff. He's got such great ownership and autonomy. And number one, are we connected? All right. And then number two, how do we set up a timetable and really a practice rhythm and routine for him that allows him to stay as fresh as possible, feels good and rejuvenated by the time we kick off the season. And then hopefully we're earning the opportunity to play games after those 17 that we're guaranteed. And so I think the offseason approach has been a little different than in years past, and he's been awesome. He and I will sit down and talk about what that looks like for training camp, but he has certainly earned the right to have a huge amount of autonomy and influence on what's going to be best for him, because he knows himself better than any of us. And going into year 17, I sure am really lucky that we're able to do this again together.
One of the most remarkable stats of last season, it's one of those that's hard to believe. You could win a few beers at a tavern if you had this bet. He said, who's the least penalized team? And you'd be like, well, it can't be the Rams. They got a bunch of kids on defense. They don't know what they're doing. A bunch of 23-year-olds. You were the least penalized team. Your defense, almost across the board is 23, 24, 25. So obviously that's mentoring. You do have a hands-on approach even to a defense. Were even you surprised that they were that good? Because I thought from week 4 to Thanksgiving, I thought they got about every 2 weeks, I thought they got better. By the end of the year, they were significantly better than week 4. And it's like, that's teaching. Were you surprised at the jump in performance? And yet there weren't a lot of blown coverages. There weren't a lot of penalties. Was that even shocking to you?
I don't know if I ever really looked at it like that. I think, number one, I think you got to give a ton of credit to those players, but I thought our defensive staff as a whole, I remember Chris Shula really going back to the lab. We're at 1-4 over the bye. Okay, now we have enough inventory of knowing what is life like without Aaron. we've got 5 games with the players, and how do we maximize and accentuate their skill sets? And I thought the fluidity and flexibility of our defensive coaching staff, and then being able to say, hey, are we improving throughout the year? Guys are getting earned confidence from the way that they practice. And I think you're right. There was improvement throughout. I really thought from that New Orleans game on and at the end of the season represented where our defense really took control, played really well. They made teams earn it. And I don't know that I looked at it like that as much as, man, I really enjoyed going to work. There was this youthful exuberance, but they played smart. These guys are instinctual players, even though they might be young in terms of experience. They played smart. They understood the situations that we were in. And I think that's a tremendous credit to Chris Shula, the defensive staff, and then obviously the players being able to bring it to life.
You have been at the forefront, Sean McVay joining us for our radio audience. You have been at the forefront of pre-snap motion. Mike McDaniel does a lot of that. You do a lot of that. I like it. I like to make the defense think. I think the more the defense thinks, potentially the slower they get. As you do that and you keep being a very progressive coach, what is the balance on that? Because there's guys like Aaron Rodgers has said, he doesn't love a ton of motion. And sometimes maybe Matt Stafford comes to you. Hey, can we scale it back? How do you judge that does Stafford love motion? Does not all old quarterbacks do, Sean. Some don't like as much.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is Matthew's incredibly open. What we want to make sure is we're accountable, Colin, to an intent behind everything we do, not just doing it to do it. And I do think that, if I'm being honest with myself, there's been some times you get a little carried away. And there's always a balance. You decide offensively when that ball snapped within the 40-second clock or 25 seconds out of the clock stoppage. And so we've got to use that to our advantage with motions or getting out of the huddle and snapping the football. And if I don't have a reason for why this gives us an advantage or what the intent is behind it, well, then we shouldn't be doing it. Matthew's incredibly open-minded. He understands the intent of what we're trying to get done. And I think being able to have that give and take and that balance of making sure it doesn't disrupt the integrity of them being able to execute their jobs. Because you talk to a lot of those quarterbacks, as you alluded to, they like to be able to say, hey, all right, similar pictures. I can get a feel for what it looks like a chessboard with how those 11 guys should be dispersed and distributed. But then there is a good give and take of, all right, well, where does that provide some relief? Maybe it's for getting access for a receiver instead of getting a bump on him. So we always try to have a reason why we're doing it, to try to be able to affect the offense in a positive way when we're motioning.
So I think my favorite article I've ever read in The Athletic was the story about you and Chris Peterson. And I think the truth is most coaches I've ever known in my life, college or pro, I covered Jerry Tarkanian years ago. He remembered every loss, and the wins just blurred. The wins just kind of into the ether. Oh, the losses were painful. And do you find yourself, because I think you're a good self-evaluator, do you enjoy the wins as much as the losses hurt? Are you driving home after a win thinking, man, I had a good game plan. I'm going home and having a good time tonight. Can you do that at this point?
After a loss?
No, after a win. Are you enjoying the wins as much as the losses hurt?
No, you know what? I think I've gotten a lot better, Colin, about I don't know. I know when you win, man, that's a really good feeling. And when you lose, that's a bad feeling as well. But I will say this. I think there's a lot more appreciation for applying the appropriate perspective. How difficult it is to get that result you're hunting up. How many people are influential and instrumental in being able to bring that together. That's what I love about football so much. So what I'm trying to do a better job of is making sure you don't ever take those things for granted. I know I did in the early parts of, our tenure here. And I think that's probably some of the stuff that caught up to me. And I don't want to live that way. I don't think that's a sustainable way of doing it. I think you've got to be able to cherish all those moments and then lean into the hard ones where you've got an opportunity to really handle those storms in the right way. And a lot of my failures and shortcomings has really led to that appropriate perspective that takes work to do every single day.
Sean McVay, coach of the L.A. Rams. By the way, 5 of his former assistants are current NFL head coaches. You've had a ton of success coaching against your coaches. And by the way, these are sharp guys. LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell and Zach Taylor and Raheem Morris, now Liam Cohen. Is there, do you feel when you're the mentor, when you coach against guys that have come up, you've got to switch stuff up. They know your audibles. Do you find that a joyful experience, or is it sometimes are you like, God, do I have to switch things? Has it forced you to be constantly amenable to change because you are now facing your system and your coaches and your language so often?
Yeah, and I think because we've got so many coaches that are, in different locations, I think every single year you have to reassess and reevaluate. And the stuff that we did in 17 and 18 and now, there's core fundamentals and principles that are always going to apply to good football. But from a tactical perspective, I think this league is too competitive. It's ever evolving. It always starts with the players, but I don't know that you get too much into that. Now, if you are going to slow it down, you got to be cognizant of they know some of the mechanics. You might have to change up a word here or there, but because of the way that you have to mic guys up, where these audio footages, end up picking up so many things, on the TV copies, you have to be really mindful of a self-scout, but those guys have been instrumental in good things here. And so it's fun to go against them. And then, but I do like going against other guys that there's not an emotional investment in.
All right. Sean McVay, as always, Coach, great seeing you. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. Always appreciate it, Colin.
You bet.